A truly crazy season at Penn State, coming off a CFP semifinal appearance last year, a league-high 14 all-conference players back. Started the season number 2 in the AP rankings, highest they've been this century. Went 3-0 in the non-conference against a weak schedule. Weren't overwhelming, but they were right there at home against Oregon. Played really well down the stretch to get the game into overtime. They lost it in double OT on a game-ending Drew Aller pick. Then it got crazy. Went on the road the next week to UCLA, a team that came in at 0-4, averaging 14 points per game. They scored 42 on Penn State, becoming the first winless team to defeat a top 10 team that late in the season in 40 years. Then this past weekend, came home to take on a Northwestern team that lost by 20 points to both Tulane and Oregon, and dropped that one too. A 22-21 Wildcat win, second straight loss to an unranked team after winning their prior 34. And that was it for AD Pat Kraft. The school announcing on Sunday it had parted ways with James Franklin, moving on from a coach who went 145 in his tenure there, but lost its last 14 straight regular season games against top 10 teams. It is time for our big interview. Former Penn State All-American and Big Ten Network analyst Matt Millen joining us now. And Coach, let's start with the decision to move on from James Franklin. How surprised were you that he was let go on Sunday?
I was shocked. That caught me completely off guard. And it's because it's rare to do that. It's rare to do that in the timeline of football. And then I went back and looked at where all the numbers are now in terms of when you have to get your recruiting in. The nil stuff is taking this thing over. You have to get all your ducks in a row there. And then it just started to make a little more sense to be able to do it sooner than later if you're going to do it. And I think that's what Pat Kraft did, so he could kind of get the work done now that he needs to get done before heading into next season.
I've been saying this, too, over the last couple of days. It just kind of felt like an untenable situation. I mean, all the questions that James would have to answer week in and week out in news conferences about his job security, obviously the spot that it would put the players in as well. So now you look at this decision. I guess I'm just curious, like, in your mind, do you see this being more about the big game failures that I had outlined there, all the regular season losses to top 10 teams, the inability to beat Ohio State and to a certain extent Michigan as well? Or was it about these last 2 games? Was it about, hey, this is a guy who had been so consistent and won these games he was supposed to win, and now he's losing to UCLA and Northwestern, who are unranked teams?
Yeah, I don't think it's about that. I think it's kind of has run its course. I think that's really when Pat Kraft took a step back and looked at it, especially given the fact that, in James's own words, he said that he had the talent this year to be able to, and returning players coming back to be able to make a run. And I think that that was a consensus thought around the Penn State community, that this is going to be a good enough team. And when it doesn't show up, and then you're losing to teams that there's no real reason to lose to them. You're better you're better athletically. You're better all the way around. I think that was that to me. What he said, he just kind of run his course. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, and had they not lost those games, obviously he'd still be the coach and he'd be measured against how they do against Ohio State and Indiana going forward this year. But again, there was just no evidence based on what we had seen to this point this year to think that this team was going to beat Ohio State or Indiana. And that's kind of the spot they found themselves in. So now Penn State is in the market for a new coach. Based on what we've seen, and James certainly elevated the program, again, had them in the college football playoff semifinal a year ago. We're 2.5 weeks removed from having a possession to win the game against Oregon. So they were close. They just didn't quite get there. What are the qualities that you believe they should be looking for in their next coach, Matt?
Well, first and foremost, you have to be able to have a guy who can recruit. because it all comes down to what, the guys who are on the field. That's the first thing. The second thing you have to be able to do, I think, is to get the right mindset. And that's not an easy thing to do. So there has to be, to me, you have to have a fight. There's a shock, right? I want to get into a fight. But that is the attitude, Dave, and you know this. We've talked about this before.
Yep.
That's the attitude you have to have when you're going into a game. And you can't leave anything left undone. You have to do all you can do. So that's an attitude, and that's something that you have to foster. I thought that we were kind of missing that at times. And then I think you have to be more physical up front. Really, when I'm watching the Penn State team this year, they're getting beat at the line of scrimmage. And there's no excuse for that. And can they get better there? Absolutely, they can get better there. And they're just going to have to just take the time to get it done.
Well, Jerry and I were talking a little bit about this earlier, and I'm curious on your thoughts. How do the players handle this now going forward here? I mean, you've got 6 games left in your season. All of the goals that you outlined, that to your point, James outlined at the outset of the season, saying, hey, this is what we're shooting for. Those goals have gone by the wayside. You're 3-3. You've got a really difficult schedule starting this week going to Iowa City. How do you approach this if you're the very talented players on that roster?
So it's not difficult. It's really very simple. You take one play at a time. You take one game at a time. You don't look past anything. You do what you're capable of doing, what you're asked to do. That's what you do. So if your job is you're a down lineman and you have to keep the guy off the linebackers, that's what you do. If you're a linebacker and you're a guy who's going to have to attack and control a gap, that's what you have to do. So it gets broken down to the simplest form, and if you do those things collectively together, you'll have a good defense and good offense. And I think it's also a little complicated now with Aller out, and then they have Gronkmeyer coming in. That's not an easy thing for this kid to do as well. So you're going to have to rely on your run game. It'll be interesting to see exactly how they play, but if you have any aspiration of moving on to the next level, and even if you just have any pride, you're going to give it all you have. You have to. It still comes down to the individual player. Never once in all my time playing did I ever rely on somebody else to get me ready to play a football game. It didn't matter if it was in high school, college, pro, whatever it is, it's still up to you.
Fascinated to see how these guys react this week, again, starting with a very challenging night game at Kinnick Stadium. Matt Millen, always appreciate you. Thanks for spending a little time with us and lending your insights on a topic that you know quite well. Thank you.
All right, David. Good to see you. Take care of yourself.
Likewise. Jerry, interested in what you took from that conversation and what you make of what Matt had to say.
Yeah, I have several comments. First of all, I was shocked as well that it happened, just like Matt was. I question the timing of the firing for a few reasons. One is, who can you hire right now that you couldn't hire after the season? Obviously, you can't hire anybody right now because anybody that you would want to coach at Penn State is not going to just leave where they are. If you ask the players, if you said to the players, we're going to let Coach Franklin go, do you want him to stay or do you want him for us to change? I think that's a fair question. I'd like to know what the players would think. I'm going to tell you the next step in firing a coach now. You're going to have a team walk out on the university at some point. If you don't involve the players in the decision, not that they make the decision, but how to handle the decision, I'm going to tell you within the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to have a college football team that says, you fired the guy who was in my house, I'm close to him, I don't believe in this, and I'm going to move on. The other thing I'd like the new coach to say to whoever's doing the higher impact craft is, how long do I have to win a national championship? I mean, I'd like a timetable. You know, maybe less than it took James before he got fired. So I would like to know that. And then the last thing I'll say, Rever, is do we have at Penn State the same amount of money, of revenue sharing, NIL, all the things that we talk about almost constantly, do I have the same bankroll that the last 4, 5 national championships have? Because if I have to do that to keep my job, I just want to have it to be a fair fight.
Well, they had a lot of money to keep around the players they kept around this year. I mean, there were a bunch of guys who could have easily.
So if they have enough, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, where we go from here is the question. But to fire a coach at this point, after being there that long, without even asking the players, that's going to be a rabbit hole as we go forward, because there's other college players right now thinking about if this ever happened to them, and I think they're going to be of the opinion that I don't have to play.
I hear you. I just think it was an impossible situation either way. I mean, once you lost those games, once your goals are gone, you essentially knew that this was going to happen, and you would have been asked about it every single week, and James would have had to go to a news conference every week, and the players, again, I use the word
they lost in the semifinals last year. If I'm a sophomore on that team, it wasn't this year national championship or bust. It was the time I played in a national championship or bust school. And we used to say, man, I wish we could have a conference. We could win a conference, because we can't win the national championship every year. So when I was a sophomore, I was in a national championship or bust program. I had my junior year to maybe win it. I had maybe my senior year to win it. So when you say national championship or bust and you have a 3-3 team that's underachieving, that doesn't mean that if I'm not a junior on that team, we can't win it next year.
Right. Yeah, I hear everything you're saying. It's a difficult situation to be in. But to your point, I mean, there's no question of what is going to be asked of the next coach. It is
absolutely
to beat the absolute elite teams in this league, namely Ohio State, but the rest of them as well. Again, can you beat Oregon? Can you beat Michigan, which they didn't do very frequently? You know, he's won 4 games.
And they should be able to.
Yeah.
They have the capabilities. I thought this was the best roster that we had seen in our 18 years. I'm not saying they can't or they shouldn't. I'm just saying, I tell you, you start telling young people that, you know, their coach, because he lost 3 games, isn't going to be their coach anymore. I mean, you lose, you know, you lose the feeling you have for the university too. You feel like, you know, you're just there to win football games, and personal relationships doesn't mean anything. The only way you can validate a relationship, evidently, is to win a national championship. You think those guys are going to come back for another game when they're graduating and when they become very successful people, and someone from the development asks them for money, and they say, "No, I'm not giving you any money. You fired my coach."
Yeah. I don't know. It's a challenging
you
situation.
You fired my coach in the middle of the season, is my point.
I understand.
Everybody knows about coaching.
I hear what you're saying. I think there's 2 sides to it, but I understand and appreciate all of your points.